Access Management, otherwise called IAM, deals with getting users, devices, software authenticated to AWS and then making sure they have access to the resources they need access to through permissions assignments. So we're talking about users being authenticated, and then those users being added to groups, and perhaps policies being attached to the groups. You can attach policies to individual users where needed. But for larger numbers of users with the same permissions requirements, it makes sense to put them in groups first and assign the policies to the group. You can also work with roles. Roles are used when you need to grant a service or software access to something. With authentication and authorization, remember that authentication deals with the proof of identity. Single-factor authentication might be one category, like something you know, which would consist of maybe a username and a password. But multi-factor authentication, MFA, uses multiple categories, thus making it much more difficult to crack into one of these types of accounts, because maybe you have to have knowledge of a username and a password, and at the same time you have to have a smart card in your possession, maybe that you insert into a laptop that supports smart cards, before you can fully authenticate and access services that you should have access to. Authorization means controlled access to applications and AWS resources. Authorization kicks in, of course, after successful authentication. In AWS, working with identity and access management, we have the ability to work with policies. Policies are collections of related permissions. As you might imagine, if we have an S3 full access policy that has all the permissions required for reading and writing to all aspects of an S3 bucket. You can also build your own custom policies. There are plenty of built-in ones, but custom policies can suit very specific needs, and you can assign them to users, groups, or individual roles which represent software. So here's a small sampling of built-in AWS policies. Amazon EC2 Full Access gives full access to manage everything about EC2. Amazon EC2 Read-Only Access, Amazon S3 Full Access, or maybe Amazon S3 Read-Only Access. Amazon Route 53 Domains Full Access, Auto-Scaling Full Access, the list goes on and on and on. Certainly before you create a custom policy, do a little search. There's a filtering field when you're in the IAM console, and you go to the policies view to make sure there's not already one there that might serve your needs perfectly. So when you navigate to the IAM console in the GUI, you're placed on the dashboard where, in our screenshot, we have some interesting security recommendations, such as adding MFA for the root user account.